Which happens, dads leave, no need to be a pussy about it.
So, after viewing Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think my only question is, why does Steve Rogers keep trying to put robots in the chokehold? It's not gonna work, buddy. What's going on, guys? My name's Cliff, and this is Unpack That Bowl, the show where we take a deep dive in the pop culture. Today's episode takes a deep dive into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Phase 2. Now, last episode we talked about Phase 1, and as much as I enjoyed it, it just had too much problems for it to be a 10 out of 10 phase. So I gave it 7 out of 10. Or 7.5 out of 10, I don't know, I'd be high. This week we're going to look at Phase 2, and we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and honestly some of the ugly from it. So I could keep talking forever, so without further ado, let's move into Phase 2. Iron Man 3. This was a surprising entry. Iron Man 3 was definitely better than the second one, and honestly, this was one of those movies that I skipped because I was convinced that it sucked, because I had heard that it sucked, but it didn't. And before I talk about why I enjoyed it, let me explain some of the problems that I had with it first. The Iron Man series villain has always been an issue. So far, Iron Man has faced the bald Jeff Bridges, Mickey Rourke, and the Cockatoo. While this time around is an improvement, it's still one of the film's weakest points. The plot draws on the comic book storyline Extremis, a 2005 and 6 series ran by Warren Ellis. Iron Man 3 pits Stark against a squad of T-100-like super soldiers who can regenerate their body parts and survive astounding damage, just like a starfish. They're visually interesting, but their motivation is murky and unconvincing. Meanwhile, the villain Killian, played by Guy Pearce, has weak motivations. Never meet your heroes, right? And his plan seems convoluted at best, but anyway, why do his followers follow him? People are dying, brutally, like exploding, like Samsung phones on an airplane exploding. But why are they following him? Is it because he saved them and they're grateful? I don't know, but honestly, I've gone through surgery before, and I wouldn't go to war for my doctor, let alone blow myself up. Fuck that. Iron Man 3 isn't really related to any of the other Marvel movies, aside from showcasing Tony's PTSD. And that's fine, it just makes the movie not mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But other than that, this movie is good. And I think the praise for that has to go to the director, Shane Black. 3 signs you're watching a Shane Black movie: it's Christmas, there's a meta voiceover, and some of the best lines are given by designer-suited henchmen.
Honestly, I hate working here. They are so weird.
Shane Black's decision to take away Iron Man's suit was genius. This is a new and vulnerable side we're seeing to the Playboy philanthropist. He's on the run, in a corner, and pausing between his witty quips to suffer breathless anxiety attacks. That nigga just like millennials now. We all got anxiety and depression. The fact that Tony opens a movie with 42 suits, and then he can't use any of them for most of the movie, I thought that was genius. The only suit Tony can use is his test phase one, and that suit is trash. And that's because it's unfinished. When we open the movie, Tony's been working for 72 hours straight. Like, nigga, that's way too much. And then Pepper Potts wakes up in bed with Tony and the suit's about to fire on her. Boy, she lost it. Tony almost lost her too. The introduction of the boy sidekick for Tony was really cool. I liked how the kid almost helped him through his panic attacks. Their back and forth was great.
Don't worry about it, I'll fix it. So, who's home?
My mom already left for the diner and Dad went to 7-Eleven to get scratchers. I guess he won because that was 6 years ago.
Which happens, dads leave, no need to be a pussy about it. Here's what I need.
Rhodes is great in this movie too, but Iron Man 3 works because it tries to break free from the constant Marvel formula. And people will shit on this movie, but it's actually really good. Iron Man 3 is a fun, clever, and adventurous movie that lets a more formulaic movie take a backseat to a movie about Tony and his PTSD. Also, this movie has the best boss fight in Marvel so far. We get the build up of Tony not really having his suits all movie, and we even see that Killian can just tear through his suits when he gets them. So he initiates Protocol House Party, and we get the coolest battle scene in the entire Iron Man series. I love that so much. Even Pepper having those powers at the end, now she can join the squad. I can just see the other Avengers pulling up and be like, hey, welcome to the squad. I like this movie even more than I thought I would originally. This was a genuine and pleasant surprise. 7.9 out of 10. I wonder if we have any more of those coming up.
Fits that gun.
You got like 5 of them. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna spot. Ready?
What'd you say?
Too fast. Nothing. Here we go.
Thor 2, Into the Dark World. I was surprised that this movie wasn't better than the first one. This sucks. And I guess there was some good in this movie, so I'm gonna talk about it. I really did like seeing a mature Thor. I liked watching him go through each realm, even though we only got one. And we got the fact that he was trying to establish order, and he was taking more responsibility in his kingdom. I like that. I also like the relationship between Thor and Loki. It's the only interesting part of these movies so far. Tom Hiddleston steals the show here, making wickedness and treachery look a hell of a lot more fun than being virtuous and being responsible and having chores and shit. Fuck that, Thor. What? Where you get to cross off saving the planet on your true will, nigga? I laid at home and ate Haagen-Dazs. How about that shit? The end fight was cool too, but it was very confusing and hard to figure out the setting and the placements of things, but still, you know, lights and flash and scenery, it was cool. But mostly, this was just another bad movie. This movie left me with too many bullshit questions that were just never even paid attention to. Like, when did the Bifrost get repaired? Why do the Asgard foot soldiers have spears and swords? If Asgard also has long-range artillery and fighter jets, I guess they kind of just said, alright, well, we spent the budget here, so y'all niggas can have some forged metal. And, you know, I hope a nigga don't got a gat, and ooh, they got guns? You better Jedi that shit. The movie makes sense, somewhat, but the big bad for this movie, Malekith, played here by Christopher Eccleston, is a poor antagonist because we don't really understand his motives. Obviously, he wants to use the ether to do something. What he wants, though, is very unclear. And Malekith was just a horrible villain, and the role was a waste of Christopher Eccleston's talents. He gave the weakest performance ever in this movie. He was just horrible. Boring, generic, one-dimensional villain with zero motivation. Natalie Portman disappoints again. Her character is the most awkward character ever. Thor and Jane's romance was forced, didn't work. Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman still have no chemistry. It's nowhere near the level of Peggy and Steve. It's just not. Her sidekick was still annoying and useless, and even more annoying somehow than the first time, and I like Kat Dennings. And their intern was only there for comic relief. Like, his name literally didn't matter. Just a bad movie. But it's good to make fun of. My biggest grief with this movie is that it does nothing for Thor. And I hate when movies don't do anything for our main protagonist. In fact, this felt more like a Loki movie than a Thor movie because he had a character arc. Thor has no character arc here. 5.5 out of 10. This was somehow worse and better than the first Thor? How does that happen? Get it out of my face. I don't even want to see it again.
Are you sure you wouldn't rather just punch your way out?
Keep speaking, I just might.
Fine, as you wish. I'm not even here.
That's much better. Whoa. Costume's a bit much. So tight. With the confidence, I can feel the righteousness surging. Hey, want to have a rousing discussion about truth, honor, patriotism? God bless them.
What?
Winter Soldier. Holy shit. Drop my blunt. Holy shit. Guys, have you seen The Winter Soldier? Have you seen The Winter Soldier? It's so fucking good. This might be my favorite movie so far. Right now, it's better than The Avengers. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't a perfect movie by any means. Cap is still kind of boring here. He has no character arc, and you guys know how much I hate characters with no character arc. What's the point of being a character? Cap just follows his gut and his nose, and if something smells funny, he challenges that. His character hasn't changed. But that's not a detriment to the movie, it's just that there were better arcs to take this character on. One of the biggest problems I have with The Winter Soldier is that it backs off of the most interesting conflict, Steve and his distrust of not only his central government, but the American government. Steve has transformed so much since his World War II youth that he can't even recognize this country anymore. Right now, America is all about fear and war and military might and suspicion and spying and preemptive war. This is America.
This is America. Don't catch you slipping now.
This is a post 9/11, post-Bush era. Endless war has replaced idealized peace. So naturally, the film is taking you to a place where Cap has to stand up against his country. And that naturally has turned into something twisted. Right? Right? Wrong. It's still the good guys versus the bad guys because, spoilers, the government is secretly ran by Hydra. Oh, okay, I'll bite. So instead of the moral conflict of going against his country, it's become Cap versus the Nazis again. And the Nazis are obviously bad, so there's no longer a moral ambiguity, and that takes away the biggest punch this movie could have had. Captain America meeting with old Peggy was also weird. It makes Cap and Bucky's relationship that much stronger if Bucky is the only connection to Cap's past. But also, it really does make Cap look like a creepy weirdo for both having a crush on an older woman, not meaning to dismiss everything Cap and Peggy have, but also it looks extra creepy because he's trying to fuck her niece in the next movie. But fuck all that noise I just said, because this is mostly a good fucking movie. In its relentless violence and dark political subtext, this has to be the most grown-up Marvel movie yet. Captain America, played by Evans again, is the embodiment of a set of values. Truth, honesty, courage, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, goofy, brave, clean, whatever. Cap is everything a Boy Scout is. He never loses sight of that, no matter how much he gets ribbed by Natasha, played by Scarlett Johansson, and his new sidekick, Sam Wilson, played by Anthony Mackie. Also, Robert Redford plays a smooth bad guy, Alexander Pierce. He does that shit so well. He stands alongside Sam Jackson's Nick Fury, and then goes against him. Captain America is a lot more aggressive in this outing as he takes on the Winter Soldier, played by Sebastian Stan, and increasingly uses his shield as an offensive weapon. That shit was lit. The brother duo directors, Joe and Anthony Russo, have decided to make the Winter Soldier something of a two-hander between Steve and Natasha, who, as portrayed by Johansson, continually threatens to steal the entire show. Her martial art movements, her sultry, smoky voice one-liners, are only more proof that we need a Black Widow movie and we need it now. This movie is exciting, the pacing's on point, and it's just a solid movie. It was exciting, and I like it, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. Rogers might not have Superman's strength, he might not have Batman's toys, and he might not have Tony's witty wisecracks.
Which happens, dads leave, no need to be a pussy about it. Here's what I need.
But don't get it twisted, he is the most human out of the group. The Winter Soldier ranks among the finest movies not only in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in the entire superhero genre. I cannot speak more highly of this movie. There was a perfect movie in here somewhere. 8.5 out of 10. Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy was a breath of fresh air. Before I rave and rant about why I like this movie, let me get the negative out the way. The plot is almost overly complicated with too many supporting characters, including John C. Reilly and Glenn Close's characters. Guardians of the Galaxy strains to fill in all of its participants' backstories and emotional arcs. Instead, they're painted with too broad of a stroke, and they all become sarcastic or witty, and they could basically all be the same Tony Stark's character. I also didn't like Thanos being in this movie. I felt narratively it didn't really make sense, and Thanos only served to be as a, hey, I'm gonna be the big bad in the future. I guess plot-wise, Thanos was there so we could be introduced to his daughters, Nebula, played by Karen Gillan, and Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana. Speaking of the big bad, this movie's antagonist is just your run-of-the-mill average Marvel villain number 2.75. Ronan, played by Lee Pace, is just boring. He's generic. Next. Thank you. Next. My final complaint about the movie is that even though this is Peter's movie, and he is the main protagonist, Gamora deserves the spotlight because she's the most connected to the villain. Usually your protagonist has some sort of connection to the big villain, and Gamora has that. Peter doesn't even know who Ronan is until Gamora tells him. Shit, even Drax has more of a connection to Ronan than Peter does. I know I talk a lot of shit, but wow, this movie was good. It was visually and intellectually really good. Guardians of the Galaxy has a lot of downsides that the franchise starters have. Trying to get the team together so that you gotta know who the guys are before you root for them. Rather than just repeating the Marvel formula, Guardians of the Galaxy feels like a legitimate attempt to add more elements to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I swear the entire budget was spent on the soundtrack. The only possession Peter has from his old life, for example, is a Walkman that contains a mixture of classic rock songs made by his mom, which becomes the film's de facto soundtrack. Realizing that they could get weird and colorful with this movie was a very good thing that allowed the music to mesh with the things that we were seeing on screen, and it was awesome. After the film, Guardians of the Galaxy became a household name, and that makes this movie's cultural impact that much better. The movie lets you look past its flaws. because it's fun and exciting, and yeah, this was much needed after the dark and realness that was the Winter Soldier. 8 out of 10. I like this.
Check out the new meat. I'm gonna slather you up in Navi and jelly. Go to town.
Let's make something clear. This one here's our booty. You want to get to him, you go through us. Or, more accurately, we go through you.
Avengers Age of Ultron. Webster's dictionary defines age as a distinct period of history, an age of technological growth. Did we have an Age of Ultron? I feel like we had a Weekend of Ultron. Like niggas is like, yo, what you doing this weekend, Tony? Tony was like, I gotta deal with my Ultron. He was like, what? It's like, yeah, I created a hyper sentient artificial intelligence, and then he's trying to take over the world and destroy it. And, yeah, I gotta deal with that this weekend. It'll be like a couple days. Like, oh, yeah, I'm just moving, trying to help. Nah, I would, but Ultron. I remember hating this movie, but it's actually a little bit better than I remember. But only a little, only un poco. This film loves its action sequences, and director Josh Whedon shot them in a way that makes you feel like you're a little kid again, and you're smashing your toys back and forth, and you're like, yeah. I liked other parts of it that weren't actiony. The whole party scene was great. I could watch an entire movie of these guys interacting because, as I've said again and again, the best parts of these movies are seeing the superheroes interact. Also, Hawkeye takes home the cake for movie MVP. He was my favorite character. Being a normal guy, fighting along with gods and super geniuses and metahumans, he's like, I do what I can. He gets the best lines.
Are you up for this? Are you? Look, I just need to know because the city is flying. Okay, look, the city is flying. We're fighting an army of robots. And I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense. If you go out there, you fight, and you fight to kill. Stay in here, you're good. I'll send your brother to come find you, but if you step out that door, you are an Avenger.
Keep up, old man.
Nobody would know. Nobody. The last I saw him, an Ultron was sitting on him. Yeah, he'll be missed. That quick little bastard. I miss him already.
And half the time it feels like he's gonna die because the movie sets it up like that.
Regeneration cradle to do this in 20 minutes.
Oh, he's flatlining. Call it.
The title villain, Ultron, played by Jane Spader, is witty, Ultron's unrelenting, and you know what, he's a little likable because he's supposed to be Tony. That's a tough line to walk, and Spader's tone and delivery are perfect for the character. Even though we never really see the actor himself, he gives the best performance in this movie. But don't let me lull you into a sweet lullaby. This movie is garbage. The movie is too sappy with no emotional payoff. Age of Ultron consistently tries tugging at your heartstrings, but there are no strings on me. There may be strings on some other you bugs, but there ain't no strings on me because I'm heartless. And it almost fails to reach a real emotional punch. And maybe that's because I'm heartless, but I think the build-up didn't match the payoff. Black Widow and the Hulk have a nice moment as she calms down. Banner, but that transforms weirdly and quickly into a oddly forward Natasha hitting on Bruce, and I was like, what? And then Bruce leaves and Natasha's like, what? And I'm like, what? Nigga, what? What just happened? Also, the fights in Age of Ultron have no stakes. The robot army doesn't stand a chance, and there's not even a moment in the entire movie where we feel like, Ultron might win. The one possible threat that might put a dent in our Avengers plan to save the Earth was the creation of a vibranium-made Infinity Stone-powered version of Ultron. But the heroes stop him, so instead, we get Vision, played by the Jarvis actor, Paul Bettany, really fit into his role, by the way. The worst problem I have with Ultron is that he could have been a really scary and efficient villain. But instead, we have a jokey mess who seems disposable, and at his scariest, he's a nuisance. And he could have been a really menacing and threatening villain if the movie took him more seriously. But he's not as scary or as interesting as the Winter Soldier. He's really not as cunning or as interesting as Loki, and he's not as ominous or hyper-intelligent as a robot Ava from Ex Machina. In fact, Ultron's just a really terrible supervillain. He's a villain of the week at best. Strawberry would be his favorite, by the way. And not even a very good one. He's supposed to be this enormously powered AI that can use the internet however he pleases. Yet he barely does that, and he just finds ways to blow things up. So instead of using his tech to shut down the global banking system, he doesn't hack military servers, and he doesn't start a nuclear war, which I realized in the film Ultron was stopped by Jarvis. This doesn't mean a more clever villain couldn't have gone around that and started a war. He didn't bother to create any chaos, he didn't make any distractions for the heroes. A better villain would have thrown the world into chaos. That would have been an Age of Ultron. Ultron builds a great big bomb that requires him to lift up an entire city and drop it. Nigga, what? This movie has bad pacing, but worst of all, it takes itself too seriously as well. The pacing is weird, and every time we cut to the Bruce-Natasha relationship, the movie grinds to a halt. Being on their farm was cool, but it was also kind of pointless. They weren't really that beat up, they weren't really that tired. Ultron doesn't know where they're going. Why did you go to a farm? Why did they go to a farm? It literally makes no sense why you would go to a fucking farm. It makes my brain hurt. Also, why does Cap feel the need to chokehold everything? You can't chokehold Ultron, dude. It's a robot. If you could see me right now, I'm making the face you make where you pinch your fucking bridge of your nose, cause like, this movie gives me headaches!
Headaches! You give me headaches!
Age of Ultron is entertaining, but so badly that this movie needs to be better. Bland Marvel movie. It doesn't leave you feeling anything, but wishing you had a better movie. I learned to love to hate this movie. 6 out of 10. Give me something good next, please. I need it. I need it. Like, I need it. I need it. I need it.
You think you're saving anyone? I turned that key and dropped this rock a little early, and it's still billions dead. Even you can't stop that.
I am Thor, son of Odin, and as long as there is life in my breast, I am running out of things to say. Are you ready?
It's terribly well balanced.
Well, if there's too much weight, you lose power on the swing.
You know, I actually just watched this film a couple weeks before doing this rewatch. On the second watch, Ant-Man was worse than I remembered. I love Paul Rudd though. So you guys have to understand that there was bad in this movie, which might have ruined Ant-Man for me, but it didn't. But check out some of the stupid shit that happens in Ant-Man. Ant-Man has an over-familiar plot, and it's essentially the same as the first Iron Man. We have a tech genius build an awesome suit. His protege wants to use the suit as a weapon. Genius doesn't want that. Causes action-packed hijinks to ensue. Like, it's not a cut and dry carbon copy, but the resemblance is noticeable, and the story goes pretty much how you would expect. Where the heist in Act 1 is an enjoyable improvement, with Scott attempting to crack a safe without the tools he needs and he has to improvise. The heist in Act 2 kind of suffers in its efforts. It tries to blend the superheroics with the thievery, and it doesn't really work. It looks cool, but it doesn't make sense.
Hey, Scotty. Hey, did I save your life? Scotty. Scotty.
Thank you, Luis.
Hey, are we the good guys?
Yeah.
We're the good guys, man.
Yeah, we're the good guys.
Feels kind of weird, you know?
Yeah, but we're not done yet. Get out of here before this place blows!
There are some cool moments with Scott controlling his ant friends, but neither the structure, nor the heist, nor the stakes, if Scott fails, are really clear beyond the whole, well, if the bad guy wins, bad things will happen. Okay. Most Marvel villains have a convoluted plan that doesn't make sense, and that's exactly what happens here in Ant-Man with Darren, played by Corey Stoll. His motivations could not be murkier, and the whole grudge feels like it came from a different movie that we didn't get to see. The dry and expository style in which Marvel movie bad guys speak is probably the worst parts of the villain, and it's also probably something that's left over from how they speak in the comics. This leaves Stoll, who I'm told is a really good actor, stranded. That and the evil villain being evil and having flimsy motivations are the only thing holding this back from being really good. if some things were better explored, and please don't get me into the physics of Scott, because, you know, he has tiny mass when he's small, so that makes sense how he's all heavy, but then he falls to the floor. Okay, hits a pipe, bounces off of it. That doesn't make sense. He should go through it. Okay, hits the floor, moves through it. That doesn't make sense. He still has the same speed, so he should have gone through the pipe. Goes, hits a DJ turntable, lands on it, probably should go through it. Needle hits him, bounces him off the table, probably should destroy it. It doesn't make sense, but there's a lot of good in this movie. As a plot, it's really nothing more than a platform for comedic riffing, but it really does conclude in dazzling action, and that brings the movie to a higher elevated point. With all of Ant-Man's powers in place, the movie can have fun, and it uses scale and shrinking and enlarging with gleeful madcap velocity. It just flies at you. You can really tell the filmmakers were sitting in a room and they challenged themselves with putting an action scene inside of a little girl's bedroom, using a Thomas the Tank Engine toy, and being thrilled when they succeeded. And although this isn't an outright comedy, all of the gags, both visual and verbal, have been written and directed with expert timing and precision. Edgar Wright might not be attached to this movie, but his influence is all over the place. Paul Rudd was amazing in Ant-Man. Rudd was seemingly born to play a reluctant superhero. Paul Rudd as an actor has been the best part of a bunch of comedies. You've seen him, I've seen him, 40-year-old Virgin is definitely one of them, but he's never been the main dude. As Scott Lang, though, he brings a real Bruce quality, and he portrays him as a man who's just trying to see his daughter and be a good guy. In a Marvel Cinematic Universe where we have witty guy number 1 and witty guy number 2 and stoic Steve, we get Scott, who's just trying to do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
Here, Paul Rudd is playing Ant-Man as a guy who's just trying not to lose everything. Standing next to Scott as his mentor de facto, actor Michael Douglas possesses a faded lying quality as Hank, a man who really did almost lose everything, and is trying to hold everything he has left together by a strand, including his daughter Hope, played by Evangeline Lilly. The scenes where Rudd, Douglas, and Lilly play off each other's comedic zip are great, and it reaches levels that Marvel hopes to succeed in every movie. Ant-Man also puts itself as a heist film. It adds a unique flavor previously unseen in the MCU, using the tropes of the heist genre to create fun set pieces that take advantage of Ant-Man's powers, and also satirize them for great comedic effect. There are some small, familiar appearances from characters like Falcon and Stan Lee. The repercussions from previous films are definitely felt here, and tiny details that might pay off, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, are great. But overall, Ant-Man stands on its own 2 feet as a fun and entertaining action-adventure movie. I really like this movie. The good in this movie is really, really good, but the bad in this movie is Marvel. 7.9 out of 10.
Just need to know where it came from. It's got to be airtight.
Okay, I was at a wine tasting with my cousin Ernesto, which was mainly reds, and you know I don't like reds, man. But there was a rosé that saved the day. It was delightful. And he tells me about this girl, Emily, that we used to kick it with. It was actually the first pair of boobs that I ever touched.
It's the wrong details. It has nothing to do with the story. Go.
So, he tells me that she's working as a housekeeper now, right? And she's dating this dude, Carlos, who's a shot caller from across the bay. And she tells him about the dude that she's cleaning for, right? That he's like this big shot CEO that is all retired now, but is loaded. And so Carlos and Ernesto are on the same softball team, and they get to talking, right? And here comes the good part. Carlos says, yo, man, this guy's got a big-ass safe just sitting in the basement, just chilling. Of course, Ernesto comes to me because he knows I got mad thieving skills. Of course, I ask him, did Emily tell Carlos to tell you to get to me what kind of safe it was? And he says, nah, dog. All she said is that it's like super legit, and whatever's in it, it's gotta be good.
What? Old man have safe.
And it's gone for a week.
All right, there's an old man, he's got a safe, and he's gone for a week. Let's just work with that.
You know what I'm saying?
Alright guys, so we just watched 6 more movies. Were these good quality movies? Kinda. Okay, so let's just go in a row. Iron Man 3, good. Thor the Dark World, bad. Winter Soldier, good. Guardians of the Galaxy, good. Age of Ultron, bad. Ant-Man, good. These movies were alright quality movies. I think we had enough movies to equal 1 Avengers and 1 Iron Man, so I'm gonna give Phase 2 an 8 out of 10. But what do I know? What would you guys rate Phase 2? Let me know down.
ready for the world to see you as